I'd spent the last semester overseas, helping my parents manage a branch of the family business. The moment I got back, I set up a reunion with my childhood crew. That's when I learned that Wyat, the third in our quartet, was officially off the market. I was just about to tease him when the private room door swung open. A girl stood there, a vision in a flowing white dress, her long, dark hair framing a face that was the very picture of innocence. He stood frozen, biting her lower lip, her eyes fixed on me with a wounded expression. "Ellie, I thought you were resting. What are you doing here?" Wyat was the first to react, jogging over to wrap an arm around her. He grinned at us, introducing his girlfriend, Ellie Reed. "I missed you," Ellie murmured into his chest, her voice as soft as a whisper. I don't feel safe when you're not around." The rest of us just chuckled, ribbing Quiet about his good fortune. "My girl's the sweet, quiet type," he boasted. "Not like Willow here. She's one of the guys." Ha ha ha. I shot him a playful glare, and the lively atmosphere returned. The four of us had been inseparable since we were in diapers. Our parents were all business partners. Our bond had stayed strong through the years. They knew I was easygoing and saw me as a sister, one of the crew. I played along, but I always knew where the lines were. I was in the middle of complaining about how bland the food was abroad, when Ellie, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Her voice, thick with emotion, cut through the chatter. As she stared at the gifts I'd laid out on the table. "Were you trying to leave me out on purpose? Hello?" Her voice was quiet, but the sob catching in her throat silenced the room. "You brought something back for everyone in your little group. Everyone but me. And you keep going on and on about how glamorous your life is overseas. I've never even been on a plane. Are you trying to mock me?" Her shoulders started to tremble, as if she were carrying the weight of some immense injustice. "Do you think I'm not good enough for Wyat, Willow? Is that why you couldn't even be bothered to get me a gift?" Wyat's face softened with pity. He immediately pulled her closer, wiping at her tears and cooing reassurances. I exchanged a glance with the other two guys. The air had turned thick with awkwardness. I sat down my chopsticks and looked at Ellie, keeping my voice as even as I could. "You've misunderstood. You and Wyat weren't together when I left. I hadn't planned for an extra gift. It was an oversight on my part. If you don't mind," I continued, "I can have something sent to you tomorrow. Just let me know what kind of jewelry or perfume you like." I thought that would smooth things over, but it only made her cry harder. She clutched at Wyat's shirt, burying her face in his chest. Her voice came out muffled, a portrait of misery. "Are you trying to buy me off? What kind of person do you think I am? Do you think a bottle of perfume will just shut me up? It's not about the things. It's just I feel so excluded." Mason, sitting next to me, frowned. As the oldest and most level-headed of our group, his words carried weight. "Ellie, Willow's not like that," he said calmly. "We've known her our whole lives. She's straightforward. There are no hidden meanings. She just didn't know about you ahead of time. It wasn't personal." "Lay." The second oldest jumped in, trying to lighten the mood. "Yeah, exactly. Willow asked us what we wanted before she left, and we all told her to just grab whatever. She went out of her way to pick this stuff out for us. She's a good friend. It's Wyatt's fault for not telling her. Don't overthink it. Really, it's not about you." But it seemed to make Ellie feel even more victimized. She lifted her tear-streaked face to Wyat. "Wyat, you see they're all ganging up on me to defend her. Maybe I shouldn't have come today. Am I just in the way? Do you also think I'm just being crazy?"
"Why?"
Its expression soured instantly. He shot me a glare, his eyes dripping with blame as if I committed some heinous crime. "Willow, can you just drop it?" Ellie's already sensitive and insecure. "Did you have to come back and immediately start cornering her? It's just a damn gift. I could have just offered to get her one and left it at that. Why did you have to explain everything and make her feel even worse? Wyat, man?
"Cool it."
Leo cut in, nudging him lightly. "You know what Willow is like. Why are you losing your temper?" He shot me a reassuring look. Seeing Ellie's tear-stained face, a knot formed in my stomach. She was my friend's girlfriend, after all. And I didn't want our first meeting to be a complete disaster. I decided to just keep my mouth shut. We probably wouldn't see much of each other anyway. But after a tense silence, Ellie suddenly sprang to her feet, pointing a trembling finger at me as the tears flowed freely. "Why are you all comforting her? I'm the one who was left out. I'm the one who's hurt. But you're all gathered around her like I'm the villain, the outsider who doesn't belong." Her sudden outburst stunned me into silence. Mason and Leo froze. I know how close you all are with Wyat, so I swallowed my pride to come here and try to fit in.
"But I don't understand, Willow.
This is the first time we've ever met, and you're already making things so difficult for me. What did I ever do to you? My roommate even warned me before I came."
She sobbed.
She said, "The girl in these kinds of tight-knit groups always causes trouble. I trusted you, but you and your friends just treated me like a fool. For your own amusement. Her thyroid reached its climax. Her eyes rolled back into her head, and she collapsed backward. Wyat lunged, catching her just in time. Ellie, look at you. You're so fragile, and you've been crying so hard. You're going to break my heart. He cried, cradling her. Wyat, I'm scared, she whispered weakly. I'm scared of Willow. With that, she went limp in his arms. Perfect damsel in distress. The next second, Wyat exploded. Are you happy now, Willow? He roared. What the hell did you learn overseas? How to be a vicious bully. You're a pampered princess. You have everything. We let you boss us around. And that's fine. I told you to leave Ellie alone.
She loves me.
Do you think she'd even be at your stupid party if it wasn't to see me? You just had to push her until she passed out. I'm warning you, she is the woman I love. And if anything happens to her, I swear to God, I'll make you pay. Without another word, he's hooped Ellie into his arms, shoved past Mason and Leo, and slammed into me on his way out the door. If Mason hadn't caught me, I would have crashed into the corner of the table. I steadied myself, my head spinning. It took me a moment to process what had just happened. Is that really how he saw me all these years? A bossy princess? He was the one throwing his weight around one. Once the shock subsided, a cold anger settled in. I'd never had someone scream at me like that in my entire life, let alone one of my oldest friends. Willow, you okay? Mason asked, his voice laced with concern. He ruffled my hair, just like he used to when we were kids. Don't worry, I'll have a serious talk with him. He's clearly been blinded by a pretty face, saying things he shouldn't. Seriously? Leo chimed in, his own anger flaring. His girlfriend is a textbook manipulator, straight out of one of those online novels. For all we know, she faked that faint. And Wyat, the woman I love, police. I'm pretty sure he said the same thing about the last one. Humph. We both owe you a huge apology. Leo had always been the most fiercely protective of us all. Listening to his rant against Wyat actually made me feel a little better. I've always been decisive. Once I calmed down, I figured I'd just avoid Ellie from now on. Problem solved. As for Wyat, we had history. And besides, he had saved my life once a long time ago. I could let this one slide. The semester was starting. Anyway, we were all busy with classes and our family businesses. The incident quickly faded into the background. I hadn't spoken to Wyat since that night, though I still hung out with Mason and Leo whenever we had time. After a while, Wyat must have noticed the distance between us. He actually reached out for the first time in weeks, trying to get the group together, and sending me apologetic memes to smooth things over. But I had a business meeting that day and couldn't make it. Wyat posted a picture with Mason and Leo on his social media feed. Amazing steak dinner courtesy of the big man. Mason Thorne, you missed out. Willow Hayes, you owe us next time. Leo tagged me in a comment, too, and I just replied with a laughing emoji. I never expected that. Later that night, I get a phone call from Ellie. I was surprised to see Ellie's name on my screen. I'd never given her my number, but I was even more surprised by the venom in her voice. Well played, Willow. You've really mastered the art of playing hard to get. I froze, caught off guard. This was a far cry from the fragile, wilting flower I'd met. You've been deliberately avoiding Wyat for the past few weeks, haven't you? Also, he'd be the one to tag you on social media today. My fingers tightened around my phone, my patience wearing thin. You're just using his guilt over your friendship to your advantage. You pretend to be too busy to see him, then drop a casual emoji on his post. Makes you look gracious, while keeping him wrapped around your little finger. You're just waiting for him to come crawling back to you, aren't you? I took a deep breath, trying to smother the fire rising in my chest. Ellie, this is the second time you've come at me like this. I'm letting it go, because of Wyat. But that doesn't mean I'm a pushover. Wyat and I have known each other for over a decade. I don't need to play hard to get, to maintain our friendship. To me, he's just a friend I grew up with. So take your bizarre accusations and shove them. I'm busy, and I don't have time for your psychodrama. Don't play innocent, she shrieked, her voice so sharp it made my ear ache. I know your type. You girls in these little cliques are always secretly in love with one of the guys. You can't stand to see him happy with someone else. You just want them all to yourself. You can't stand seeing me and Wyat together. You're playing hard to get, to drive a wedge between us. What do you have that I don't? A little more money. You're just another spoiled trust fund baby. Without your family's cash, you're nothing. I rubbed my temples. Listening to her unhinged rant was almost funny. Was this a personality disorder, or just an overactive imagination? Willow, her voice suddenly cracked, shifting into a pathetic whimper. You know how insecure I am. You know I'm scared I won't fit in. You're trying to isolate me to turn everyone against me, aren't you? Why are you doing this to me? I tried to apologize and he won't even accept it. That sudden dramatic shift in tone sent a chill down my spine. I knew what was coming. Sure enough, I heard the sound of footsteps. Then Wyatt's roar as he presumably snatched the phone. What the hell, Willow? Ellie went out of her way to get your number for me, so she could apologize. She was worried there was a misunderstanding between us. She's bending over backward, and you're still bullying her. Hearing Wyat instantly take her side without a moment of hesitation just exhausted me. His parents were self-made millionaires. You think they would have raised a son with a mind of his own? Wyat Ellis' theatrical tragic voice piped up from the background. Does Willow just look down on me? Is she trying to break us up? Why else would she keep targeting me? Why won't she just leave me alone? Before Wyat could fall for it again, I cut her off.
Oh.
Shut up. Your entire world revolves around imaginary rivals, isn't it? You just live for the drama. I've given you a pastime, and again for Wyat's sake. But you just don't quit. And you, Wyat, I snapped, my voice dripping with contempt. Is that a tumor on your neck or just your head? A zombie has more brains than you. You believe every word she says. You really think I have nothing better to do than entertain you too? And your little freak show? The frustration from the past few weeks finally boiled over. I was done. I was juggling my studies and the family company, running myself ragged, and these two were my biggest headache. Since you're so convinced I'm the villain trying to break you up, then fine, we are done. You can have a wonderful life with your precious, fragile girlfriend. Let's just delete each other's numbers. Out of sight, out of mind. With that, I pressed the red button, ending the call before Wyat could scream another word into the receiver. My fingers didn't tremble. If anything, a profound sense of relief washed over me as I went into my contacts, found Wyat's name, a contact that had been at the top of my favorites list for 12 years, and hit block. I did the same for the unknown number Ellie had called from. For the first time in weeks, the air in my apartment felt light. I set the phone face down on my desk, took a sip of cold water, and pulled my laptop closer. I had a financial projection report for the Hayes Group's new commercial real estate venture due at 9 the next morning. If Wyat and his girlfriend wanted to drown in their own manufactured tempest, they could do it without using me as their anchor. The next afternoon, I was sitting in a quiet, glass-walled corner of our university's library, reviewing market analysis sheets, when Mason and Leo walked in. Without a word, Leo slid a hot matcha latte onto my desk, while Mason pulled out the chair opposite me, his expression grave. I take it you heard? I asked, not looking up from my laptop, though I appreciated the latte. We didn't just hear, we got the full dramatic play-by-play. Leo grumbled, pulling up a chair of his own. Wyatt called me last night, absolutely raving. He said you insulted his intelligence, called his girlfriend a freak, and threatened to ruin his life. I told him he was losing his mind, and hung up on him. He called me too, Mason said calmly, crossing his arms. He wanted me to leverage my father's connection to get you to apologize to Ellie. Apparently, she's been traumatized by your verbal abuse and spent the night crying. I told him that if he ever brought his personal drama into our family's business relations again, I'd personally ensure my father pulled his investment from the Ellis Group's retail development project. I finally paused my typing and looked at Mason. You said that. Of course I did, Mason replied, his eyes steady. Wyat is behaving like an adolescent. He's forgetting that our bond isn't just childhood nostalgia, Willow. It's built on mutual respect and shared responsibilities. If he's willing to throw you under the bus for a girl he's known for 5 minutes, he's a liability. He's not just a liability, he's an idiot, Leo muttered. I did some digging, by the way. You know how Ellie said she's never been on a plane and that she's just a poor, defenseless girl from the suburbs? I raised an eyebrow. And her father is a mid-level developer in the next state over. She went to a private boarding school, Willow, the same school my cousin went to. She was expelled senior year for orchestrating a massive cyberbullying campaign against a girl who didn't let her join her project group. The girl's family sued, and Ellie's parents paid a massive settlement to keep it quiet. She's not some fragile flower. She's a highly strategic, professional victim. I took a slow sip of my latte. The pieces of the puzzle clicked together instantly. Ellie's theatrics at the restaurant, the dramatic fainting spell, the sudden unhinged phone call where she dropped the sweet act entirely, only to slip right back into it the moment she heard Wyat's footsteps. It was all a calculated performance. She needed a villain to justify her fragile persona, and as the only female in Wyat's tight-knit childhood circle, I was the perfect target. Why Wyat, though? I asked. Because Wyat is emotional, impulsive, and has a massive savior complex, Mason explained. He's always wanted to be the hero. With you, me, and Leo, he's never had that chance. We're independent, we're driven, and we don't need saving. Ellie gave him the role he's been dying to play, the knight in shining armor. Well, his armor is starting to rust, Leo said with a cold laugh. My dad told me this morning that the Ellis Group is struggling with cash flow for their new plaza. Wyat's father, Harrison, is desperate to secure the Hayes Group's backing. If Wyatt keeps acting like this, your dad is going to catch wind of it. And we all know how your dad handles people who disrespect his daughter. I sighed, rubbing my temples. Let's just leave it alone. I don't want to involve my father in this. He's already busy enough with the overseas merger. As long as Wyat and Ellie stay out of my way, they can play whatever game they want. Just be careful, Willow, Mason warned softly. People like Ellie don't stop when they're ignored. They take silence as a challenge. For the next month, I lived in a state of blessed peace. I threw myself entirely into my work and studies. My father had given me a trial role as the assistant project director for the Hayes Group's upcoming commercial hub, a high-stakes, multi-million-dollar development that would cement our family's footprint in the region. It was exhausting work, filled with late-night strategy meetings, site visits, and endless negotiations with contractors, but I loved every second of it. Mason and Leo were always there, keeping me grounded. We had dinner once a week, intentionally keeping the conversation away from Wyat. From what Leo gathered, Wyat's life had become a whirlwind of drama. Ellie had convinced him to move out of his family's estate and into a luxury penthouse she picked out, claiming his parents' staff made her feel judged and unwelcome. To fund her extravagant lifestyle, Wyat had started drawing heavily from his trust fund, much to his father's fury. But the real storm didn't hit until the annual Autumn Charity Gala. The gala was the premier social event of the season, hosted by the City Business Chamber. Every prominent family, investor, and entrepreneur in the state attended. It was a formal affair where business cards were exchanged over champagne and multi-million-dollar partnerships were sealed with a handshake. I arrived with my parents, wearing a tailored, emerald green silk gown that was elegant without being flashy. My hair was swept up in a sophisticated updo, and the only jewelry I wore was a simple diamond pendant my grandfather had given me for my 18th birthday. As we entered the grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton, the atmosphere was buzzing. I immediately saw Mason and Leo standing near the VIP lounge, looking sharp in their tuxedos. They waved me over, and after greeting their parents, I joined them. "You look stunning, Willow," Mason said, offering me a glass of sparkling water. "Thanks, Mason. You guys don't look too bad yourselves," I teased, adjusting Leo's slightly crooked bow tie. "Ugh, don't get me started on this thing. My mother insisted on it." Leo complained, but he was smiling. "Anyway, have you seen who just walked in?" I followed his gaze toward the grand entrance. Wyat had arrived, but he wasn't alone. Clinging tightly to his arm was Ellie Reed. She was wearing a voluminous, bright pink tulle gown that looked entirely out of place at a black-tie business gala, more suited for a high school prom than a room full of seasoned executives. Her makeup was heavy, and she was dripping in flashy, oversized diamonds that looked incredibly gaudy. Wyat looked stressed. His tuxedo was slightly rumpled, and his eyes were darting around the room anxiously. It was clear his parents had not approved of her attendance. Harrison Ellis and his wife were standing on the opposite side of the room, intentionally ignoring their son and his date, their faces pale with embarrassment. "What is she doing here?" I murmured. "This is a closed-door business event." "Apparently, Wyat begged his father for an extra invite," Leo whispered. Harrison only agreed because Wyat promised he would use the opportunity to pitch some investors. But looking at her, I don't think investment is what she has on her mind. As if sensing our gaze, Ellie turned her head. Her eyes locked onto me, and a tight, triumphant smile spread across her lips. She whispered something to Wyat, pulling him by the sleeve toward our direction. "Here we go," Mason muttered, stepping slightly in front of me. "Keep your cool, Willow." "I always do," I replied smoothly.
Willow.
"Mason."
La.
Wyat greeted us as they approached. His voice sounded forced, his eyes avoiding mine. "I didn't think you guys would be here so early." "It's a business gala, Wyat. We're here to work," Mason said, his voice polite but distant. Ellie stepped forward, her hand still clutching Wyat's arm so tightly her knuckles were white. "Hi, everyone," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "It's so nice to see you all again. Especially you, Willow. I was so worried we'd never get to clear the air after our little misunderstanding on the phone." I looked at her, my expression entirely neutral. "There is no air to clear, Miss Reed. I've forgotten about it entirely." Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, her fingers tightening on Wyat's sleeve. "Oh, please call me Ellie. And I'm so glad to hear that. I've just felt so terrible. I know how close you and Wyat used to be, and the last thing I wanted was to come between a childhood friendship." She emphasized the word slightly, a subtle jab meant to remind me of my place. "You didn't," I said, taking a sip of my water. "People grow apart. It's a natural part of life." Wyat cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable. "Look, Willow, about what I said on the phone." "Wyat, please," Ellie interrupted, her voice suddenly dropping into that familiar, fragile register. "Don't bring up the past. I'm sure Willow doesn't want to talk about how she called me a freak in front of everyone. We're here to have fun tonight." A few nearby guests, including a couple of prominent female investors my father was hoping to partner with, turned their heads at her words. Ellie's voice had been just loud enough to carry. Leo's eyes narrowed, but before he could snap, I stepped forward. I didn't look angry. I looked mildly amused. "Miss Reed, if you are going to misquote me, at least do it accurately," I said, my voice clear and perfectly modulated so that the surrounding guests could hear every word. "I didn't call you a freak. I said your behavior was a freak show. There is a distinct difference. And as for our phone call, I believe you were the one who called my private number to accuse me of trying to seduce my childhood friend because I left a laughing emoji on a social media post. If you are still harboring those insecurities, I highly recommend seeking professional guidance rather than airing them at a corporate charity gala." A quiet gasp rippled through the nearby huddle of guests. One of the female investors, Mrs. Vance, raised her glass to her lips to hide a smirk. Ellie's face flushed a deep, angry crimson. Her lower lip began to tremble, and she looked up at Wyat, her eyes welling with instant, practiced tears. "Wyat, she's doing it again. She's humiliating me in public." Wyat's protective instincts flared, his face darkening as he stepped toward me. "Willow, that's enough. Who the hell do you think you are to talk to her like that? Just because your family has money doesn't mean you can look down on people." "Wyat, watch your tone." Mason stepped in, his voice dropping an octave, carrying a cold, commanding weight. "You are standing in a room full of your father's business partners. If you want to ruin your family's reputation, do it elsewhere. Do not raise your voice at Willow." "I don't care about the business partners," Wyat yelled, his controls snapping. "I care about the woman I love. Willow has been targeting Ellie from day one because she can't stand the fact that I'm not her little lapdog anymore. She's a spoiled, vindictive." "Wyat Ellis." The deep, booming voice cut through the tension like a guillotine. Wyat froze. Ellie's tears dried up instantly as everyone turned to see my father, Arthur Hayes, standing there. Beside him was Harrison Ellis, Wyat's father, whose face was so pale he looked as though he might faint. "Mr. Hayes." Wyat stammered, his bravado evaporating in an instant. My father walked over, his presence commanding the entire corner of the ballroom. He didn't even look at Ellie. His sharp, icy gaze was fixed entirely on Wyat. "I have known you since you were in diapers, Wyat," my father said, his voice quiet but carrying an immense, terrifying gravity. "I have watched you grow, and I have treated you with the respect due to my partner's son. But if I ever hear you speak to my daughter in that manner again, I will not only ensure that the Hayes Group severs all ties with the Ellis Group, but I will personally make sure no bank in this city touches your family's projects ever again." "Arthur, please." Harrison Ellis stepped forward, his voice trembling as he grabbed Wyat's shoulder, practically dragging him backward. "He didn't mean it. He's just stressed." Wyat apologized to Willow and Mr. Hayes immediately. "Father, she..." Wyat tried to protest, looking at Ellie, who was now shrinking back, trying to hide behind him. "Apologize," Harrison roared, his face turning purple. "Or so help me God, I will cut you off from the family assets tonight." The silence in our corner of the ballroom was deafening. Dozens of high-profile eyes were locked onto us. Wyat looked at his father, then at my father's cold, unyielding face, and finally at me. The realization of what he had just done, and the sheer scale of the disaster he had brought upon his family, seemed to finally penetrate his skull. I'm sorry," Wyat muttered, his voice barely a whisper, his fists clenched at his sides. "I apologize, Willow." "Mr. Hayes." My father didn't acknowledge the apology. He simply turned to me, his expression softening. "Are you all right, Willow?" "I'm perfectly fine, Dad," I said, offering him a reassuring smile. "Just a minor distraction. Shall we go meet the board members from the Vance Group?" "Yes, let's," my father said. He glanced one last time at Harrison Ellis. "We will discuss our joint venture tomorrow, Harrison, in my office." With that, my father led me away. Mason and Leo followed close behind, leaving Wyat and a trembling Ellie standing in the wake of their self-inflicted public humiliation. The fallout from the gala was swift and devastating for the Ellis family. The next morning, my father officially pulled the Hayes Group's financial backing from the Ellis Group's upcoming retail plaza. Without our endorsement, 2 major banks immediately retracted their loan offers, leaving Harrison Ellis with a massive, half-constructed concrete shell and a mountain of mounting debt. Furthermore, Mason's father followed suit, delaying their planned logistics partnership with the Elises indefinitely. Within 48 hours, the Ellis Group stock took a nose-cone dive. I learned all this from Leo, who called me while I was in the middle of a project review. "Harrison Ellis is absolutely losing his mind," Leo said, sounding thoroughly entertained. "He kicked Wyat out of the family home, seized the keys to the company car, and blocked his credit cards. He told Wyat he isn't welcome back until he rids himself of that leech and begs you for forgiveness." "And did Wyat do it?" I asked, looking out the window of my office. "Are you kidding?" Ellie played the us against the world card. She convinced him that his parents are abusive tyrants who are trying to control his life. She told him they can survive on his savings and her influencer career. Apparently, they've moved into a cheap, rundown apartment on the outskirts of the city. I shook my head, a mixture of pity and disbelief washing over me. Wyat really is blind. He's not blind, Willow. He's just proud, Leo sighed. He's gone too far to admit he was wrong now. If he admits Ellie is the problem, he has to admit he ruined his own life for nothing. It's easier for him to play the tragic, romantic martyr. Let him play it, I said. As long as his stage is far away from mine. But as Mason had warned, people like Ellie don't go down quietly. A week later, a video surfaced on a popular local social media page. It was a heavily edited, black and white video of Ellie sitting in a dimly lit room, looking pale and completely devoid of makeup. She was crying softly into the camera, her voice trembling. I never wanted to make this video, she sobbed in the recording. But the bullying has gone too far. I am just a normal girl from a humble background who fell in love with a wonderful man. But because his childhood friends are part of the wealthy elite, I have been targeted, humiliated, and excluded. One girl in particular, a wealthy heiress named Willow, has used her family's immense power to ruin my boyfriend's family business, all because she couldn't stand that he chose me over her. They're trying to starve us out, to force us apart. I'm scared for my safety. The video quickly gained traction, racking up tens of thousands of views and hundreds of angry comments from users decrying corrupt rich kids and bullying heiresses. My phone started blowing up with notifications. I sat at my desk, watching the video on a loop, a cold, calculated anger replacing my initial shock. She wanted to play the public relations game? She wanted to use the internet to paint me as the villain? I picked up my office phone and dialed our corporate legal team. Get Mr. Vance on the line, I told my assistant. And call a meeting with our PR department. It's time to clean up some trash. We didn't issue a public statement immediately. A hasty defense would only make us look guilty and feed into the defensive rich family narrative. Instead, we let the video circulate for 24 hours, letting Ellie bask in her fleeting moment of internet fame and sympathy. Meanwhile, our legal team and a private investigation firm Mason had recommended worked overnight. By the following afternoon, we had everything we needed. I called a press conference at the Hayes Group headquarters. We invited major local news outlets, business journalists, and the online creators who had shared Ellie's viral video. I stood at the podium in a sharp, tailored black blazer, looking every bit the corporate executive I was training to be. Mason and Leo sat in the front row, offering silent support. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice steady and professional. We are here today to address the highly publicized allegations made by a Miss Ellie Reed against myself and the Hayes Group. I pressed a button on a remote, and a large projector screen behind me lit up. First, let us address the claim of a humble background, I said. On the screen, a series of certified documents appeared. Miss Reed is the daughter of Richard Reed, a prominent real estate developer with a net worth of over $8 million. She attended the prestigious St. Jude Boarding Academy, where tuition is $40,000 a year. This is her enrollment record. A murmur went through the press gallery. Second, let us address the claims of bullying and exclusion. I changed the slide. This time, a series of screenshots from the St. Jude Academy archives appeared. It was the official disciplinary report from her senior year, detailing how Ellie had orchestrated a systematic harassment campaign against a scholarship student, which eventually led to her expulsion and a hefty out-of-court settlement paid by her parents. And finally, I continued, my voice dropping into a colder, sharper register. Let us address the claim that I am trying to break up her relationship with Wyat Ellis out of jealousy. I clicked the remote. A video played on the screen. It was high-definition security footage from a VIP lounge at a high-end nightclub, dated just 3 nights ago, while Wyat was supposedly working a double shift at a local gym to pay their rent. In the video, Ellie was sitting on the lap of a well-known, wealthy playboy heir from a rival development firm, laughing as he fed her champagne. She was whispering in his ear, her hands sliding into his jacket, before they shared a long, passionate kiss. The cameras flashed rapidly. The journalists were practically falling over themselves to take photos of the screen. As you can see, I said, looking directly into the main camera lens. Miss Reed's narrative of a fragile, innocent victim targeted by a jealous heiress is entirely fabricated. The Hayes Group's decision to sever ties with the Ellis Group was a purely business decision based on the financial instability and reckless personal behavior of their junior executives. We do not make multi-million-dollar decisions based on playground drama. I closed my folder. My legal team has already filed a multi-million-dollar defamation lawsuit against Miss Reed and the platforms that circulated her unsourced allegations without verification. We will not tolerate attempts to extort or slander our family name for social media engagement. Thank you. No questions. I walked off the stage to a barrage of shouting journalists, but I didn't look back. As I entered the green room, Leo let out a wild cheer, throwing his arms around me. "Oh my God, Willow. That was magnificent. Did you see the look on the reporters' faces when the cheating video came on?" "You completely destroyed her," Mason said, a rare, genuine grin spreading across his face as he handed me a bottle of water. "I don't think she'll ever show her face in this city again." "I don't care where she shows her face," I said, exhaling a long breath, feeling the weight of the last few weeks finally lifting. "I just want her out of my life." The aftermath of the press conference was absolute chaos for the other side. The public opinion flipped overnight. The very users who had defended Ellie now turned on her with a vengeance, labeling her a con artist, a gold digger, and a pathological liar. Her social media accounts vanished within hours. But the real tragedy was played out in a dingy, one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. 2 days after the press conference, Leo received a frantic, tearful call from Wyat. According to Leo, when Wyat saw the footage of Ellie kissing another man, the very man whose family was a direct competitor to the Ellis group, he confronted her. Ellie didn't even try to deny it. Realizing the game was up, she packed her expensive designer bags, which Wyat had bought her with his dwindling savings, and left. Before she walked out the door, she coldly told Wyat that he was a useless, naive loser who had ruined his own future and that she had only stayed with him because she thought his family would eventually cave and give him his money back. Wyat was left with nothing. No money, no family backing, no career, and no girlfriend. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when my assistant buzzed my office phone. "Miss Hayes, there is a young man in the lobby asking to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says he's an old friend. His name is Wyat Ellis." I paused, my hand hovering over my keyboard. I looked out the window, at the rain streaking down the glass. "Send him up," I said quietly. A few minutes later, the door to my office opened. Wyat walked in. I almost didn't recognize him. The confident, boastful guy I had grown up with was gone. In his place stood a hollow, exhausted young man. He had lost weight, his face was pale, and there were dark purple bags under his eyes. His clothes were cheap and slightly damp from the rain, and he kept his head down, unable to meet my eyes. "Willow," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Sit down, Wyat," I said, gesturing to the chair opposite my desk. He walked over slowly, sitting on the very edge of the chair, as if he were afraid he might dirty it. He stared at his hands, which were trembling slightly. I don't even know what to say," he began, a tear escaping his eye and rolling down his cheek. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Willow." I didn't interrupt. I just listened. "I was such an idiot," he sobbed, burying his face in his hands. "She manipulated me from the very start. She made me feel like I was the only one who could protect her, and I wanted that so badly. I wanted to feel important. I threw away my family, my career, my friends. I threw you away. The best friend I ever had." He looked up at me, his eyes red and filled with a desperate, pathetic hope. "Please, Willow. I know I don't deserve it, but please forgive me. Can we go back to how things were? I'll do anything. I'll apologize to your dad. I'll work from the bottom. Just please don't hate me." I looked at him for a long, quiet moment. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt a profound, empty indifference. "I don't hate you, Wyat," I said softly. A spark of hope lit up his eyes. "Really? Willow, thank you. But we can never go back to how things were." I cut him off, my voice calm, steady, and utterly final. The spark in his eyes died. "The Wyat I grew up with," I continued, "the boy who once pulled me out of a frozen lake when we were 10, the friend who always had my back, that person wouldn't have believed a stranger over me. He wouldn't have stood by and watched his girlfriend humiliate me. He wouldn't have screamed at me, called me a spoiled bully, or threatened to make me pay." I was blind. Wyat cried, grabbing the edge of my desk. "She tricked me." "She didn't trick you into hating me, Wyat. She just gave you an excuse to show me how little you actually valued our friendship," I said, my voice unwavering. "You wanted to be the hero, and you were willing to make me the villain to play that part. You chose her. You chose to burn every bridge we built over 12 years. "Willow, please," he whispered, his shoulders shaking as he wept. "I forgive you, Wyat. For my own peace of mind, I forgive you," I said, standing up from my desk. "But we're no longer friends. The trust is gone, and it's never coming back. I hope you find a way to rebuild your life and make peace with your father. But you will do it without me." I walked over to the door and opened it. "Goodbye, Wyat." He looked at me, realizing that no amount of tears, begging, or remorse would ever pierce the shield of my indifference. He stood up slowly, his body heavy with the realization of his permanent loss. He walked out of my office, and as the door clicked shut behind him, I felt the final chapter of my childhood officially close. That evening, The rain had stopped, leaving the city streets glistening under the glow of the streetlights. I met Mason and Leo at our favorite rooftop restaurant. The air was cool and crisp, smelling of fresh rain. When I walked over to our table, Leo immediately handed me a glass of champagne, while Mason pulled out my chair with a warm smile. "To new beginnings," Leo said, raising his glass. "To new beginnings," Mason echoed, his eyes locked onto mine with a quiet, deep warmth. I touched my glass to theirs, the clear, ringing sound of the clinking crystal echoing in the night air. I took a sip of the cold champagne, looking out over the sprawling city skyline. The road ahead of me was long, filled with challenges, business ventures, and a future I was building with my own two hands. I had lost a childhood friend along the way, but looking at the two men sitting beside me, the ones who had stood by me through the storm without a single doubt, I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be.